My name is Janice Matwi, and I am currently the head of ACCA in Zambia. I've got a dual role where I'm also the Africa lead for employer partnerships, and I'm also the founder of A Seat at the Table. Currently, my job involves taking care of a constituent of members in Zambia, a job that is quite fulfilling, where we do a lot of work around advocacy and just advancing the accountancy profession in Zambia. So my career started out in customer service. I started working for a pay TV company, and during that time I formed relationships and I understood the value of teamwork and collaboration. I think for me that was a really pivotal moment in my career, because it made me understand how to serve customers for profit. I think a lot of jobs that we take on, we don't see ourselves as being part of the bigger picture. We usually see ourselves in a silo, and we think that this is all there is. My job at that pay TV was training ground for me to gain confidence, for me to understand how to deliver through others. After that, I moved on to an ad agency, and I think that was the most fun part of my career. It was working with a number of brands, Zambia's leading brands in telecoms, in banking, in insurance, and just coming up with campaigns. And I think there's nothing more fulfilling than seeing your first campaign on a billboard and knowing that you are the originator of that campaign. And later on, I moved on to telecoms, and I think for me that was the make or break of my career. Telecoms taught me how to commercialize products and understand the entire ecosystem of drawing out customer value from transactions. And I think for me, from then, that was it. And that made my career, and I went into fintech. I've got some experience in fintech, and finally I'm where I am in taking care of an association of finance business leaders. So looking back at the challenges I've faced as a business leader, there's quite a number, but I think I'll focus on three. One was when I moved into telecoms, taking care of a department of people. It was the first time I was remotely managing people I had never met before, countrywide, through the trade team. It was the first time I was managing a large budget, multi-million-dollar budget, and getting to understand processes was really difficult for me. But I then managed to put up, I asked one of my team members, who was very good at Excel at that time, to put in place a system for me to be able to track spend, to be able to understand how to negotiate budgets, and to build relationships with suppliers. The other challenge that I faced was when I took up my role at ACCA. ACCA is not for profit. I was coming from a place where I was in FMCG, well, fintech, and you would say fintech and telecoms is FMCG, fast-moving consumer goods. And I remember getting into the space and wanting to do things at the pace of a profit-making organization. And so having to change and work within a culture where things are not urgent and you have to constantly be busy was very difficult for me and my team, and the settling period was quite challenging. But through that, I learned patience, I learned adaptability and being able to pivot. I knew that I'd been hired for my skills, but I knew that those skills would have to be used in a different context because of the culture. And finally, COVID. It was a very trying moment for myself and, of course, many other leaders. All the 5-year plans that we have in place just went dead. Everything that we thought we knew that business has uncertainties, but everything we thought we knew just was turned upside down. And so having to manage, my leaderships, having to change my leadership style from a transactional of is this done or isn't this done, to then finding out how are you doing really, really, was one of the really challenging times. There were people that lost loved ones. I lost loved ones. And to have to get on a call and, motivate your team when you've just been mourning somebody who you really love and you couldn't see off properly was very difficult for me as a leader. And but it grew me. And with every challenge, I think it's important to then look back and take stock and think about what you learned about it and just embed that as part of your professional identity. The growth mindset. You need to make sure that you are not falling prey to your failures. It's very easy to unpack at the place of your failure and pitch a tent and say, this is the end for me. But you need to be able to, as an aspiring leader, even just as a leader, there is a time for you to look at your failure, assess it, but don't stew in it. Once you assess where you went wrong and why you went wrong, take that as a lesson. I always say that there are no failures but lessons, right? You learn about stuff. You learn about how not to do something. You learn about how to do something better. But once you learn, it's important for you to use those learnings. Otherwise, you get stuck in a cycle, a very toxic cycle, and you become toxic to those around you. So as an aspiring leader, have a growth mindset. Learn to pivot. If something doesn't work, they always say if A doesn't work, there are 25 other letters in the alphabet, or is it 26? Pivot. There's so many ways that you can do it, but just never get caught up in the victim mindset. Because I know that some people that have not been able to progress in their lives, it's purely because they unpacked at their place of their failure and became a citizen of that little town. Pivot. So I will focus on 2 books, and primarily because those books are written by Zambian authors. I am a huge fan of people owning their narrative, and one of the biggest things for me is seeing Zambian authors tell their stories. The book that has impacted me, there's 2 books that have impacted me recently by Zambian authors. A book by Linda Kasonde called Women, Resilience, and the Will to Lead. This book changed the way I looked at women in leadership, especially in the Zambian landscape. And 2 of the things that really stood out for me is that leadership is not a popularity contest. Leadership is intentional. Leadership is planned. Linda talks about how she planned her progression to becoming the first female president of the Law Association of Zambia. It was not deliberate. It was not an accident. It was deliberate. And as I read the book, I began to see the struggles that Linda faced and the labels that were given to her as a female leader. And it resonated so much with me because some of the labels have been given to me as well. And so the will to lead is internal. It's something that you have to have made up your mind that you want to lead, because leadership will throw you curveballs you never imagined they could. And one thing that Linda sets out so beautifully is her leadership journey, her foundations, what her thought process was during very challenging times. So for me, it feels like a blueprint for female leaders, not only in Zambia, but actually all over the world. So it's a book that I would encourage any aspiring or current leader to read. Another book that has been on my mind and has really impacted me, it's also around building resilience, is a book by Mwangala Lethbridge, Still Standing. Mwangala's story is amazing. She tells her story of how she She lost her leg in a motorcycle accident, and she almost lost the will to live. But that book brings to life Mangala's journey as she found healing, as she started asking herself who she was and what her life would be after that accident. It's an amazing book. And I think for me, it was really great to see names of people that I've grown up with, that I know, her mentioning places that I've frequented. It brings my world to life, but through pages as well. So that's another book I would say grew me.